Extension Service joins us each Friday, and you get a chance to ask him your questions about lawns and gardens and such. 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. It's 349-9227. And you may call now if you have a question for Bob this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. Enjoying the fair?
Yes.
Yeah. Spend a lot of time over there. What do you look for at the fair that maybe someone who is an agriculture specialist does not look for? Do you spend a lot? Because I know that you have judged livestock at fairs before.
No, not livestock.
You've never judged livestock?
No.
Oh, I thought you had. Okay, I know you've judged chocolate cake because you and I judged chocolate cake together one year.
Yeah, I judge things that don't walk.
I try not to walk when I get to the fair, and I know you've been judging me.
Sometimes it's harder than others to walk around,
and
then you have to watch where you walk.
Yeah, absolutely, especially around the barns.
Occasionally.
Let's say good morning to our caller and stop with this tomfoolery. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Bob, I have a question for you. We have a Rose of Sharon tree. It's about 3 or 4 years old. The last 2 years now, it's been full of buds, but the buds never bloom. Is there anything you could do to bring out those buds to bloom?
While Bob is being silent here, I'll tell you he's got a puzzled look on his face.
So the buds are there. So that's a.
It's loaded with buds.
Okay.
About the last 2 or 3 years, had tons of them, and they open up just a little wee bit, but they never fully bloom.
That could be something to do with that particular plant or that particular variety, because if they're getting the buds are partially opening, but they fail to go the rest of the way. There could have even been a little damage, although, yeah. So Rose of Sharon blooms in the summer. So it blooms on new wood. So those buds are produced once, the flower buds don't overwinter on that plant. They're going to be produced on that new growth that comes out each year.
Okay.
So there really shouldn't be any winter damage or anything like that could cause, cold temperature damage to cause those buds to not develop properly. Do they look like they're normal? They're not stunted or wavy or different, they don't look like they should?
Well, you said there, it's the bud is partial. It opens partially enough that you can see what the color of the flower would be, but not enough that it actually opens up to the flower. You get a little peek of it at the flower that never comes.
Okay, and the foliage looks all right?
It seems to be okay.
Okay. So a couple of things. Unless there was something that, of course, it's hard for an insect. If we get insect damage, it usually doesn't completely damage every bud or flower on the plant, because you could have some that were damaged. You might have had Japanese beetles start to feed on those buds that would have damaged them, and then they wouldn't fully open up, or the tissue wouldn't be there.
Japanese beetles off of it, but it's not like the maybe see 1 or 2 on there from time to time, but nothing like an infestation.
But otherwise, the foliage of the plant looks good green, healthy. Yeah. No, all right. I'm just wondering whether it's something to do with that particular plant. That it's. I would get another one and try a different one.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Digging is involved with that. So
yeah, that's right. There's work to be done to remove one and replace it. Some
miracle potion that would pop them up.
Yeah, because if the plant is growing well, if it looks well, if it's growing well, if the leaves are the normal size and color, obviously it's getting growth that it developed those buds. And it gets to the point where it's opening, but it's not able to open properly. I'm just trying to think of other things. I mean, potentially there could be nutritional.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If there's a nutritional deficiency, that's a possibility.
We'll try that before we dig her out. I guess.
That's the next step.
Yeah. So So it might be. It would be good to take if you've never soil tested that area. The only other thing I'm thinking about, sometimes there are some lawn weed killers that if they, like 2,4-D, if it could volatilize a little bit after a application to broadleaf weeds in the yard, that can drift a little bit. However, you should also see those symptoms. You'll get crinkling, crumpling of leaves, but that could also affect the plant's ability to flower.
All righty.
So that's
Okey-doke.
But if you don't have any of that, if there's 2,4-D is it's grouped as a plant growth regulator. So while it's very good at killing weeds, if applied improperly at the wrong time, you can get a little bit of drift. Occasionally, in very hot weather, if it's applied, it will volatilize and drift, and on sensitive plants, especially broadleaf plants, including shrubs, that can cause some effects on there. And what actually happens is you'll get twisting, curling, crumpling of leaves, and distorting of that plant tissue, especially on the newer growth. But if you're not seeing any of that, or
no,
nobody around's done any
what
applications,
what would be a good nutrient to put in there?
Well, because that's
in particular,
because that's a flowering plant, a fertilizer that's a little higher in phosphorus. So even one of the liquid ones you can mix up and water on the plant, like a 15-30-15. We don't need as much nitrogen, but a little more phosphorus.
Okay.
All right.
Good enough.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Gosh, we get a lot of Rose of Sharon questions, don't we?
Yeah.
It's a troublesome little thing.
But it's a common plant. It's and right now they're blooming.
Yeah.
Or should be.
In most cases, not this particular case.
You wait all year for midsummer for those to be in full bloom, and
then
this
happens.
one's not doing that.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, 479-1160, 349-WCCS. Let's find out what our next caller has to say. Good morning.
Good morning. This is a tomato question.
Yes.
Okay.
On some of my tomatoes, on the top, it's in places it's kind of yellowish to orange, and there's also some like valleys in the tops of them, and I wondered what I could do to prevent that.
Okay, in the top of the fruit?
Yeah, the top of the tomato.
Okay. All right, the stem end. This year, with our weather conditions, it is very common to see some sort of checking, cracks in the top shoulders of the fruit. A lot of that has to do with the weather conditions. So if we had nicer days and a little more sun and less cloudy, cool weather, and some fluctuations in growing conditions, we've pretty much had ample moisture the whole season. In fact, too much in some cases. But that will all affect how those tomatoes turn out. So on a little better year, you would see less of that. And it doesn't, you can still use the tomato, of course.
Oh, yes.
And usually they're still intact. Just got to cut that top off. But you can get, you'll get yellowing, and then you can get actually checks and cracks in that top third of that fruit.
And that's from too much rainfall.
Well, it's a combination of rain, cooler weather conditions, just kind of dampness being around there a lot, and a little bit of fluctuations in the growing conditions, where you might get a few days of sun but then we might have 4 or 5 days of cloudy, cooler weather, and so that all affects how that plant is growing, and will, in our case this summer, that's why those plants have developed some of those markings and things on the fruit itself.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
So a better year, you might see a lot less of that or none of it at all.
The tomatoes still taste good.
Yes, there's there's the important thing right there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're a minute away from
Meaty and juicy rather than hard and crunchy.
moving on from this wonderful segment with Bob Pollock today. We talked last week about fertilizing lawns and things. In less than a minute, tell me what I need to be looking at with my lawn this coming week, the first week of September.
Well, you may need to do a fertilizer application if you haven't done one in a while. Especially if it's not growing as much. If it's a little bit yellow, not as green as it's been. Nice to get that on before we get a rainfall, especially. If you need to repair areas or sow areas, this is the month to get that done.
All righty. Very good. Thank you,
welcome.
sir. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. He's Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. It's too late for me to plant my tomatoes, isn't it?
Yeah,
For the
unless
year?
you have a greenhouse.
For the year? Okay. It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. It's AM 1160 WCCS and FM 101.1.